Hello and welcome to this month's Insight. Have mistakes of the past ever stopped you from taking action in the present? How often have regrets and missed opportunities kept you from taking positive action for the future? As someone once said, living in the past is simply wasting today's time cluttering up tomorrow's opportunities with yesterday's troubles. Whatever has happened, has happened. If an opportunity has been missed, then it's gone. Endlessly dwelling on it will not bring it back again. Constantly reliving the past leads only to inaction, to giving up and giving in. Dr. Arthur Freeman calls this self-defeating behavior woulda, coulda, shoulda thinking. He's helped thousands to replace suppressive anxiety over the past with a step-by-step positive action plan for today. Dr. Freeman has developed this system for ending self-defeating patterns of behavior and developing a positive perspective on life. Arthur Freeman is Associate Professor of Clinical Psychiatry at the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey. He is also Clinical Associate Professor of Psychology and Psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania. He's a seminar leader, international lecturer, and is the author of several books on cognitive therapy. On this Insight program, Dr. Freeman explains how to turn immobilizing distress into decisive action.
Hello, I'm Dr. Arthur Freeman. I want to talk with you about how to recognize woulda, coulda, shoulda thinking, just in case it's anchoring you to failure and unhappiness, when you wish you were living out the life you always wanted to have and enjoy. No one should have to endure a lifetime of woulda, coulda, shoulda thinking. It's something we learn, and therefore in most cases, it's something we can unlearn. And it certainly is a good idea to look back and reflect on our past actions from time to time, to learn from our mistakes so we can do better next time. But it's possible to overdo a good thing, like taking too many vitamins. Mere reflection on the past can turn into endless concentration until it becomes seemingly impossible to stop thinking about past mistakes. The term for that kind of thinking is rumination. Cows ruminate by chewing the same material over and over again. They even bring back food they've swallowed to give it still another going over. That's great for cows. But when people bring back events of the past to mentally chew them over and over again, they do themselves a great deal of harm. You see, one of the problems of woulda, coulda, shoulda people is that they can't perceive when they're stuck in an onslaught of wrong thinking. That's because negative thoughts are nothing less than a one-sided monologue that bombards your mind until you lose control. Instead of allowing them to spin you out of control, making you feel worse and worse, confront those negative thoughts. When you question your internal thoughts, you interrupt their flow. When you interrupt that hostile bombardment, you'll begin to feel better. But you may be up against a pattern of negative thoughts so powerful that interrupting or questioning them isn't enough. They need to be replaced. But how? The most effective way to put old information into storage is to bombard your brain with new information. And you do this by developing a course of action that forces you to think about what you're going to do today and tomorrow, thus taking your thoughts away from what happened yesterday. Concentrate on a specific activity, something as simple as getting a cup of coffee or cleaning out the basement. The point is to push those negative thoughts into the background. For the time being, you have to concentrate completely only on what you're going to do today and tomorrow. You have to concentrate on making a change. You have to work at developing new activities that will result in new memories. Of course, after many months or even years of woulda, coulda, shoulda thinking, you're bound to have become patient about enduring the past and impatient about the future. Maybe you apprehensively agreed to try something, but when it doesn't produce immediate results, you drop out with the negative conclusion that you knew it would never work. Nothing has worked before, nothing ever will. Wrong. The secret to successfully changing your life is to change it one step at a time. When you decide on a goal, a significant change you'd like to accomplish in your life, you don't just leap to it in a single bound. Once you decide what change you want to make, you need to list out the steps needed to get you there, and then expand your list 2 or 3 times to make sure the steps are really small steps. Then as you take each step, you can get used to the new place you've reached in your life and move onward and upward to the next step. Each new plateau you reach will give you more and more confidence. When you decide what change you want to make in your life, it will probably involve some advantages and some disadvantages. Make sure that your facts are accurate and complete. Here are some other things to check. Are you insisting that you come up with a perfect solution? One that will solve your every need? That's really difficult. But consider, even if the solution is imperfect, will it move you closer to where you want to be rather than further away? Are you insisting that if you can't have what you should have by now, you'd rather have nothing? Don't measure what you want by what you should have. Compare what you want with what you actually have. There's a big difference. Are you catastrophizing? Are you once again imagining a disaster that might not occur? Whatever course of action you determine to accomplish change in your life, you may find yourself putting off that action. This is typically because you become apprehensive about taking a risk. Doubts start to assail you, such as, what if he says no? What if I repeat the same mistake again? What if the new job turns out to be worse than the one I have now? All change involves risk. There's no such thing as a guarantee that will always do the right thing. Still, take heart. As one study showed, people who took risks and failed are, as a group, happier than those who didn't risk, those who opted to go on being dissatisfied with their lives. However, even though you cannot avoid some degree of risk in a particular plan of action, you can reduce the risk. You don't have to quit one job to seek another. In fact, most people agree that the best time to look for a new job is while you have your present job. Then, too, you can reduce risk by consulting with people in another organization or another field. Are you willing to at least inquire about whom you might talk to? The big thing is to set your plan of action into action. And I'm sure you've heard the old Chinese saying which says, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Take that single step. See how it works out. Get used to that degree of change. The point is you're on your way, and there's no telling how far you can travel. But suppose, just suppose, your plan doesn't work out. Are you willing to pick yourself up off the ground and try again? Many people would rather lie there than take any further risks. How many times are you willing to try again? In real life, we need backup plans, and we need the endurance and sometimes the courage to put plan B, C, or even D into action. Woulda, coulda, shoulda thinking tends to wear us down. We start thinking about all the people, these people who succeeded with scarcely any effort at all. We invariably start thinking about the easy winners. But please notice the rest of us, hey, we're here too. We're the ones who keep on trucking, the ones who get tired, who get discouraged, but who get up and try again, because that's the only way to change anything. If you're discouraged, challenge the assumptions that discourage you. In case you have trouble picking yourself up and trying again, and again if necessary, are you really saying that you demand change quickly and easily, or not at all? Would you rather spend the next 5 years working toward creating a better life, or would you rather spend the next 5 years bemoaning the better life that you don't have? Are you demanding that any plan you undertake be totally without risk? Do you take the failure of Plan A as proof positive that you're worthless? Have you really analyzed why Plan A failed and how you might correct or avoid the failures? Do you assume that Plan B must be a very close variant of Plan A? Consider the man who devoted his life to becoming a Major League Baseball player. He tried playing pro ball with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He didn't make it. His Plan B led him into Major League politics. That's how Mario Cuomo became governor of New York. Do you assume that Plan B will be harder than Plan A, and Plan C then harder than Plan B, and that your energy level is just too low? Well, there's no way to predict whether the next plan will be harder than the previous one. But in fact, it may be easier simply because you've become adept at planning, more aware of what can go wrong. If you fall, you may not fall as far. There is a wonderful satisfaction to simply not giving up. And something else. When you stay active, when you keep moving forward into places you've never been, you gain confidence. And you may discover places and opportunities you never knew existed before. You can then decide where, among all of these destinations, you'd like to go. Moving ahead means living in the exciting new world of now. Whenever you feel tense and tied up in knots, think about what has happened, what has gone before. Write these thoughts down so that you can read them and study the exact words you're using against yourself. Sift through your thoughts and identify the chains that are holding you a prisoner of the past. Brainstorm goals for the future. This means sitting down with a pencil and paper and letting your thoughts run just as free as you possibly can and look for possibilities. Remember, anything goes. You can always pare the list down later to make more practical alternatives. Break the problem down into workable parts. What would be required of you to reach a specific goal? What help would you need from others? What resources would be necessary? Once again, write down as many steps as you can think of. Think in terms of increasing your chances, of broadening your opportunities, rather than in terms of what the final result might be. Analyze possible alternative courses of action by making separate lists of the advantages and disadvantages of pursuing or not pursuing each one. Ask yourself, what trade-offs are you willing to accept? What constraints must be accommodated? Remember that the way to cause bad memories to fade is to replace them with new, good memories. And the way to do that is to do something, to be active, to move ahead, to get involved in a project, to investigate new possibilities. Some other things to remember. It's important to be fair to yourself when planning your goal. Please don't set it so impossibly high that you can't attain it. Don't set it too low, which would amount to an acceptance that nothing will ever change for you. Let me reemphasize the point that making any choice, even the choice to do absolutely nothing, involves consequences. Your choice may involve cutting losses. A woulda, coulda, shoulda thinker will say, if I admit that I've been wrong to stay angry and vengeful about my divorce since my mate has remarried, I'd have to admit that I've wasted the last 10 years of my life. I won't do that. The real question is, can you afford to go on wasting the next 10 years of your life? Your choice may involve compromise. Somehow, achieving the really meaningful things in our lives always seems to demand that we give up something else that we value a lot. And yet, thinking through alternatives, taking the time to investigate possibilities, this is how you at least temper some of the compromises. Is there something you can do that will make your choice better, even if it will never be perfect? If you can improve only one facet of your life, isn't that worth doing? When successful, you will develop the ability to see the past and look into the future in a much more balanced way. We call this ability the Janus outlook. The name is taken from Janus, the Roman god of doorways. Janus is always pictured as having eyes, nose, and mouth on both the front and the back of his head. That's because a doorway is both an entrance and an exit simultaneously. When Janus stands in the doorway, the present, he looks forward and backward at the same time. The month of January is named for Janus because it marks the end of the old year and the beginning of the new. And that's my point. Janus learns from where he has been while keeping two of his eyes well focused on where he is going. Janus is a good role model for all of us who have regrets about our past. We may never forget what we cannot erase, but there's no need for us to be disabled by it. And what's more, we can learn from our past experiences if we're willing to avoid the errors of negative thinking. You can now challenge exaggerated and distorted memories and prevent them from pinning you to the past. You learn from looking back and then set your sights on where you are going, not where you've been. You can enter the doorway asking, what next? And while we're on the subject of the Janus outlook, I want to leave you with this concluding thought from that noble Roman Cicero, who lived in the 1st century BC. Said Cicero, "Let us not go over the old ground. Let us rather prepare for what is to come."
That was Dr. Arthur Freeman showing you how to overcome negative events of the past so you can live fully in the present. And now, here is more of the timeless wisdom from the Dean of Personal Development, Earl Nightingale.
The experts in the field of self-image psychology point out that, for most people, there is an invisible barrier that stands between what they've accomplished and what they could accomplish and become in the future. It is the image they hold of themselves. It's also been demonstrated any number of times that the self-image can be changed. I've told this story before about a Wisconsin farmer who was walking through his fields one day and came across a small glass jug in his pumpkin patch. Out of curiosity, he decided to perform a little experiment. He picked up a young pumpkin and poked it through the neck of the jug, being careful not to break the vine. Then he placed his little experiment back on the ground and went on his way. When harvest time came, the farmer again came upon the pumpkin in the jug. It had completely filled its glass prison and then could grow no more. Compared to the rest of the pumpkins in the field, it was a runt, exactly the shape of the glass jug, worth little or nothing. It seems that people are often like this pumpkin. Our self-image is something like that jug. We will grow to fill it, and then grow no more, at least not until we get ourselves a bigger jug. Most people have a tendency to underestimate themselves by wide margins. They tend to stand in the valley of their weaknesses and look with awe upon the strengths of others. They need to climb to the top of the mountain of their strengths, and they'll have a much better view of themselves and the possibilities of the world around them. The successful person who, knowing what he would like to achieve, says, "Others have done it, why shouldn't I?" He has a healthy respect for his own powers and the knowledge that there's a lot more lurking within him than he's ever used or could ever use. A leading expert in this field put it this way: there exists within each of us deep reservoirs of ability, even genius, that we habitually fail to use. Why do we habitually fail to reach into these deep, rich areas of potential, of pure net profit? It's because we tend to take ourselves and our powers for granted. It's because we tend to be more conscious, often painfully so, of our shortcomings than we are of our unique strengths, talents, and abilities. It's fear, too, I suppose. In India, you see great elephants working under the direction of small men perched on their heads. In their ignorance and fear, the elephants don't know that they could easily shake off this limitation to their freedom and have the whole forest in which to roam. But getting back to this business of the self-image, Each of us carries in his mind an image of himself and his limitations. Now, almost always, this image is much smaller, much more restricted than it should be. We should never compare ourselves to others. We're different from others. We have our own unique strengths upon which we can build the structure of our lives. It's been said that the wise man is happy when he gains his own approbation, and the fool when he recommends himself to the applause of those about him. The wise man endeavors to shine in himself. In a New England town, a burglary ring struck clothing stores, breaking in boldly at night and seizing loot, even as police sped to the scene. Nothing like this had ever been seen. They worked so quickly that they were always out ahead of the arrival of the police. The police chief knew the felons were not picking and choosing carefully, but were snatching whole armfuls of suits, hangers and all, from the racks. What to do? Well, hoping for an inspiration, the chief wandered aimlessly through a haberdashery, looking at the displays, counters, and racks. Then he noticed how the hangers had been put on the racks, with the hooks all pointed in one direction, the way 90% of us hang our clothes. Immediately, he saw the solution to his problem. He sent a note to every clothier. Go through your racks of clothes and reverse every other hanger. Now adjacent garments could not be removed from the racks except by handling them individually, lifting one forward, the next backwards. It was then quite impossible to grab off suits by the armful. They had to be removed one by one. And with their method of operation ruined, the burglars were licked, and they left town. I got this story from my friend Jay Mendel. He's an expert on creative thinking and problem solving, and he also tells the story about how the city of New York stopped people from stealing the light bulbs from the old subway trains. He says before streamlined coaches were put in operation, the trains were lit by bare light bulbs. These became the object of pilferers, who never had to buy a light bulb because the subway furnished all they needed, while the customers had to sit in the dark. Well, the authorities were so disturbed that they considered putting plainclothesmen on the trains to catch the crooks. Then some creative thinker came up with another idea. Every bulb and socket was removed and replaced by counterparts with a reversed thread, so the bulbs screwed in backwards, counterclockwise. The result? Pilferage was stopped. The bulb snatchers realized with disgust that the bulbs wouldn't fit their fixtures at home. Wherever you find people, you find such creative solutions to problems. It doesn't take education or special learning to solve most problems, but rather a clear and creative way of looking at the problems. Half the battle is won if we realize that every problem has a solution. But I think you'll agree that when most people come up against a problem, that's what it is, and that's what it remains, a problem, a stumbling block. And that's about all there is to it until some creative person, often a youngster without any preconceptions, comes up with a perfectly simple and logical solution. There's a creative solution to every problem. In fact, the true creative thinker gets as excited about problems as other people do about solutions. Once a problem is solved, he starts hunting for another one. Each of us has the capacity for creative problem solving, but for most, the capacity remains largely unused. Genius is nothing more than the ability to think in new directions. The chair you sit in did not exist in the tree from which the material came, but in the mind of a creative person who conceived of it and designed it. And so with the desk or table, the rug on the floor, the drapery at the window, the very floor and walls and ceilings that surround us, or the car in which we ride, the shoes in which we walk, everything. I always enjoy having lunch with Jay Mendel. He reminds me, and we need reminding, that problems are opportunities waiting for solutions. How would you like to have absolute security for the rest of your life? There's a way to get it. There are no forms to fill out, no payroll deductions. To be covered by this new plan, all you need is a job, any job at all. By just having a job, a person can put the plan into action immediately, right now or tomorrow. And one of the best ways of making sure you don't forget about this plan for complete lifetime security is to write it out and carry it in your wallet or purse. Then just check on it once in a while. The declaration should go something like this. It is my understanding that no cash payments are to be made into this plan. I further understand that I need abide by only one rule to obtain complete coverage and benefits, namely, that beginning this date, I specialize on my job, whatever it is, that I do it better than anyone else can do it. Now, in return for this premium, I shall expect unemployment protection, retirement security, sickness and accident benefits, and peace of mind. Well, that's all there is to it. There's a man in Chicago with a very simple job. His work is shining shoes, but this man has specialized to the point where he's known as the man who gives the best shoe shine in town. Busy people walk 6 blocks and more for a shine by this man. He receives a lot of offers to supervise other shoe shine stands, and he can't remember ever having a jobless day or a day when business was bad. A man by the name of Emil Fry was a cheesemaker in Monroe, New York. He worked in a big place with a lot of older cheesemakers. He wasn't a forceful young man, nor particularly sociable. He just concentrated on making the best cheese in the shop. And the cheese that he made came to be called Liederkranz, and Emil had all the security he needed. It makes no difference at all what the job happens to be. Every job has somewhere within itself the key to everything we could want for ourselves and our families if we'll work constantly on ways to improve what it is we do. There are no good or bad jobs. It's the way in which they're handled that makes the difference. And yet this obvious truth goes unnoticed by far too many workers. This is why all the managers in the world aren't the oldest people in the plant. That's why the best jobs don't always go to the people with the most seniority. That's why men and women who started just like everyone else at the job when they were about 21 are at 45 earning 5 times the income of the rest of the people who started at the same time. They just made up their minds to do their jobs better, and anyone can do it. To my mind, no one is more to be pitied than the person who feels his work is an infringement on his time, who feels antagonistic toward his company and the work itself. Since work occupies at least 8 hours of 5 days a week, these individuals are not happy half the time they're awake. And you want to know something? This kind of individual usually isn't happy the rest of the time either. If he's too blind to see his opportunities at work, he's probably the same way off the job. Some people may not agree that what I've been saying will result in absolute security for the rest of their lives, but it makes no difference whether they agree with me or not. It's still true. It's been proved thousands of times, and it's being proved everywhere today. I ran across a little capsule course in human relations. See what you think about it. It has to do with words. The 5 most important words you can say are, I am proud of you. The 4 most important words you can say are, what is your opinion? The 3 most important words are, if you please. The 2 most important words are, thank you. As you might have guessed, the least important word, the pronoun I, is used the most, with some people almost exclusively. Strange, isn't it? This short course on human relations gives us a pretty good idea why most people haven't the foggiest notion about how to get along well with others. Let me run over the list of important words again for you. The 5 most important words you can say are, I am proud of you. When's the last time you used that sentence? The 4 most important words you can say are, what's your opinion? The 3 most important words are, if you please, and the 2 most important words are, thank you. Sometimes we forget that effective communication is a two-way street. To communicate effectively does not mean to talk about ourselves to others in an effective way. Effective communication means to get our ideas across effectively and leave ourselves completely out of it. After we've done this, it means getting feedback, letting those with whom we're communicating then communicate with us. I read a good illustration of this one time. Think of effective communication as a game of tennis. You hit the ball and then wait for it to be returned. You hit the ball over the net, the ball being the subject. You do not run and throw yourself over the net. If a person can get a clear picture of himself or herself flopping over the net into the other person's court, and thus ending the game in an awkward and ridiculous manner, every time he or she begins to talk about himself or herself, it might help his or her human relations tremendously. In this same illustration, the writer went on to say that most people don't use the tennis technique of communication. Most people make a game of golf of it. They just keep hitting their own ball. They wait for their partners to hit theirs only so they can begin hitting their own again. Well, so much for that personal pronoun I. If it must be used, it should be used in sentences such as, I think you're right, or I think you've got a good point there. But I'd like to add that and then go into your rebuttal if you're in disagreement. It's impossible to keep all the I's out of our conversation, and it isn't necessary. But to be constantly talking about ourselves in conversation is the best-known way ever discovered to bore the person you're talking to, unless you're a test pilot, an astronaut, or a big game hunter. Even then, it'll wear thin pretty quickly. We'd all do well to remember to converse as we would play tennis, not golf. Learning good human relations is a lifetime study, but it's well worth it. It pays off in so many ways with our children, our acquaintances and friends, and in our careers.
That was Earl Nightingale. And now, please turn this cassette over to hear Stan Cottrell on side 2.